Hello and welcome to Spirits in the Theater. I'm Mike Mayashiro and I'll be your host. And today we're going to talk about Terminator Dark Age. Listen, Sarah Connor is one of the coolest characters from the Terminator universe. And so I love that she comes back in this one. Obviously, she's much older. Still got a kick though. Sarah Connor's character always was pretty depressing to me. She's always so drab and intense and kind of hopeless a little bit, you know. Unfortunately, she brings that to this film too. But it's so much fun to see her back in action and participating in this storyline. Some interesting notes I took away from this movie was the choreography for the fight scenes was pretty cool, but also pretty brutal. It's interesting to see the intensity of the brutality in Hollywood and how much more graphic and gritty stuff needs to be for us to buy it or believe it, or I don't know. There's this increasing standard of violence that certain filmmakers need to reach in order for us to take them seriously or to get that that legitimacy across almost. And this movie definitely goes there. I'm not a huge fan of the gore and the bloodshed, but I did really enjoy a lot of the fight scenes. I thought it was super cool. The actress who plays the main Terminator character here, I thought she has such an interesting look to her. She's so kind of mesmerizing, almost inhuman a bit in her features and the way she obviously she has a bit of robotic stuff going on. Anyway, it was fun watching the fight scenes happen at different times throughout this movie, and interesting to see the dynamics between these three women. There's a moment where the Hispanic character, her name was Grace, makes a comment about the other two women, and she's like, "Oh, I wish you two weren't so white." And I was like, shoot, that is, I wonder if one of the other characters had made a statement about her being Mexican, if in our culture we would have gotten away with it, you know what I mean? Because I think if I'm with a friend and they do something stereotypically Mexican, I probably would make I don't know if I would. If someone made an Asian stereotypical move, I would probably call it out. My roommate is full-on Chinese, and I love to make Asian jokes with him. But I'm like, that seems like such an interesting double standard in our culture today, where it's okay to make fun of white people for their ethnicity, but if we do it to someone else who's not white, it's unacceptable. I think I understand one side or the other, but to be inconsistent like that just kind of rubs against me in a not great way. So I didn't love seeing that. I don't know that I want to open a huge racial conversation here, but that's always been a pretty interesting theme in my household, because my dad's Japanese, my mom's American. I grew up in a Chamorro culture, so race was always a diverse, subject in my house. And anyway, to watch it play out in a, predominantly white environment that I'm in, it's interesting to see the narrative come out across in the media. There's a moment where a drone crashes in the middle of a field, and you know what? Grace is the name of the Terminator, not the Hispanic girl. I don't remember her name. Anyway, the Terminator comes rushing to save the human girl, right? And it's this moment where they're all under arrest and they have all these army men taking them across the border to put them in jail or whatever. And they're playing along until that girl's about to die. Then the Terminator breaks all the rules and doesn't care what these people think. And I had this moment while I was watching that where I realized, or I just had this recollection. There's a very real element when it comes to relating to the truth, having a relationship with truth, that when you align yourself with what you know is true in your heart, regardless of other people's perceptions or their judgments or their agendas, and you're not afraid of consequence because you know this is right, all of a sudden you're not afraid of what people think of you anymore. And you step into this level of freedom that is supposed to be our normal. When you still are trying to cater to a certain kind of result or outcome or get someone to think or feel a certain way about your behavior, you are not free. You are working for someone else, and you're actually trying to earn something that you already possess that for whatever reason you just don't believe. And I don't know why in that moment that just clicked for me in that story, but we all have these moments in our lives where something happens and the consequence is so much more intense to us than living a life of quiet servitude to a lesser master, and then all of a sudden we bust out of the chains to grab onto the thing that really matters to us. And those moments actually end up being very liberating when they can kind of be a traumatic or scary moment. We have those moments here and there, and they could just be scary things that we survive, or they could actually be moments of unlocking where we get to say yes to what's always been true in our hearts that we just have been quieting or withholding because we're trying to also gain something else in the meantime. There's a double-mindedness to that, and like we all walk around with some sense of what's true, and then there's a layer above that where our compromise resides, right? Where we kind of negotiate and we make agreements with things that maybe don't line up with what we know is true, but we'll do it here temporarily for the short-term benefit. But that kind of decision making and those choices do cause suffering and loss in our vitality and our ability to show up and experience full life. And as we do that over a long period of time, our sensitivity to our own desires, our own ability to influence our environment starts to dull. And we become a bit desensitized and detached from the life we're living, detached from the story that we're walking out. And we're meant to be present and engaged every day in the life we're living, not out of obligation or out of striving or toil, but out of a delightful invitation to matter and to expose something that the world doesn't know yet. We're each living out a secret that God is revealing to this world. And when we desensitize ourselves, when we say no to the truth in order to gain something lesser, we actually deny the world the truth of who we are. And we withhold the narrative that only our life gets to bring to the table. And then truth gets hidden from others as well. And it's such a bum deal. So I don't know why a drone smashing into the ground, almost killing that girl, sent me into this place, but it did. And I was like, dang, that's a very real element that would be really good for all of us to keep in front of us and continue to embrace the boldness and the courage that comes from living life on the edge and leaving our hearts on the line and not playing not to lose, but playing to win. And then there's a moment at the end of the movie where one of the characters says that I forget what the villain's name was, Legion. They said, Legion wants us to kill each other. We should be fighting the machines. And I was like, I can't just pass that line. The evil Terminator wants to twist them again, because he could change his shape and the way he looked or whatever, right? And he wanted them to kill each other and like distrust each other and disconnect and isolate or whatever. And the Terminator's like, we need to fight the machines, not each other. Like, we're here to fend for and like protect each other rather than ourselves individually, realizing who the real enemy was, right? It was the machines that were trying to kill them, not the human on human thing. And if they understood the elements of the war they were in, their decision making would shift, right? And so that's obviously true for us. When we recognize, when you get offended by somebody or hurt or someone like betrays you or whatever, it's easy to vilify that person and turn them into the bad guy and make them the obstacle or the person to be defeated or overcome. But at the end of the day, the enemy is not the person. The enemy is either in what they're bringing to the table that's not true or good, or the enemy could actually be in our own, on our end, like just in the way that we're perceiving or experiencing that moment and filtering it through a lens that's not true. But regardless of whatever the scenario might be, the other human being is not our enemy. And if we can remember that and recognize, like, none of these human beings are ever actually going to be the person I'm supposed to fight or oppose or overcome. I'm not a victor over them. I'm a victor over corruption, over death, over sin, over deception, over lies, right? Like, that's the stuff that Jesus put us above. He didn't lord us over other human beings. He gave us authority over the principalities and powers of this world. And when we understand and recognize that and hold it in the proper place in our hearts, we then rightly get to respond to our relationships and the people around us and treat them accordingly with the honor, the love, the support that they deserve just by being a human being, but then also recognizing whatever conflict we are experiencing is not because this person is wrong, but because there's a disconnect, something's present that shouldn't be. And we get to hunt that out. We don't hunt the person, we hunt the enemy, the actual enemy, which is the proposal that perhaps you're not safe, perhaps they're not worthy of love, perhaps you're not, whatever. All those ideas, we grab them by the throat, force them to say Jesus. And remember, guys, when you're watching a movie, you're never alone.